Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT-06, and BT-06 offers us lots of new and powerful cards to build some really powerful and exciting decks, along with upgrade some current and existing decks. And one of those current and existing decks I'm going to be taking a look at is actually going to be I guess, Wargreymon deck or a Mastemon deck. It doesn't really matter which way you look at it. Either one could be technically the main, just because they're accomplishing some very similar goals and playing with some very similar synergies. But regardless, I'm going to label this as a Wargreymon deck because I think Wargreymon is still a pretty viable card in BT-06 now that BT-06 actually gives him some synergy, and Mastemon also becomes more viable for the same type of synergy, where we're going to be reducing our own security off of these two cards, and we have cards in BT-06 that are going to reward us for reducing our own security. So we already had cards previously that want us to be at a particular security threshold, and that's already very easy to achieve with those two cards, and now that we have cards to actually reward us for removing cards from our security, these cards do get better as a result. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Upamon. So Upamon is just the 5th Digitama of the deck. It could really be anything you want it to be. Upamon is a card where it rewards us for being at that 3 security threshold, with allowing us to draw a card when attacking once per turn, which is pretty good because it helps with the overall consistency of the deck. And then the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Koromon. So because I am prioritizing Wargreymon over Mastemon, I do value Koromon's ability to basically do the same thing that Upamon is doing, except reducing the opponent's Digimon's DP by 1,000 is just that valuable to me because Wargreymon's already leaning more into the control aspect because he already has DP reduction. So Koromon having more DP reduction just plays with Wargreymon a little bit better because Wargreymon's also allowing us to draw cards up from our security. So I do think while Upamon is really nice, if we're going to be attacking or going in with our megas anyway, then I want my mega to have more impact than just try to draw me cards. If I was going to run Mastemon as the main, I probably won't want to reverse that, but regardless, both of these cards are the best Digitamas that we have to be working with for this style of deck. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Salamon. So Salamon is a very fantastic rookie for this deck because Salamon has this nice on-delete ability where if we have 3 or fewer cards in our security, then we get to recover 1. So recovery is very important for this deck because we are going to be dealing damage to ourselves, and once we are in that 3 security threshold, then being able to constantly have different and varied ways of recovering us, making sure we're always going to have security to use both as a resource and as our health, means that Salamon is just very good because it has an easy way of deleting itself just by swinging into the opponent's security, or if the opponent needs to control our field, then they're going to be forced to delete the Salamon, thus triggering the recovery ability. So I think Salamon as a result just is very good because it could recover us on a rookie body. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of BushiAgumon. So BushiAgumon is just a game finisher for this deck. We really only care about the fact that it has the rush ability. We do have ways to potentially get all the way up to 5 memory to just hard play the Bushi, but that's not necessarily the main goal or intention. Bushi is just in there to just apply extra pressure when we need it, and I wish I had the available space to run more, but we do need the space for some of the other cards to help with other parts of our gameplay. So BushiAgumon being an alternate game finisher or just help push the extra aggression for the deck is still just very valuable. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Lucemon. So Lucemon is a very powerful card, and it's acting as another way for us to be recovering in our deck. So we could recover this by bringing it back with Mastemon. We could recover with this playing it for free off of Angewomon, swinging with any of our megas. So we do have alternate ways to play this card so we can mitigate its play cost, and its on-play ability is just the very simple ability of allowing us to recover 1. So that way we could utilize this card to just flat out recover us as security without really doing anything other than just figuring out alternate ways to play this card. And as I mentioned before with Salamon, recovery is just that important because we are going to be dealing damage to ourselves. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copy of Starmons. So Starmons is a very powerful level 3 for yellow to be working with as a whole because it's one of the more powerful removal type cards that level 3s have. So it has a nice on-play ability where for each Digimon we have in play, then one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 1000 DP. So at worst, he's just doing 1000 himself if he's the only thing on the field, but if we have multiple Digimon on the field, then he gets stronger and stronger, and we have ways to play Digimon on the field for free, both off of Mastemon and Angewomon comboed with Wargreymon or Mastemon. So there's just lots of ways for us to fill up the board relatively quickly, making Starmons a very powerful Digimon to be interacting with because of that synergy where we just want to have lots of bodies on board. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Tamermon. So Tamermon is one of the new cards to come into BT-06, and this card is really good acting as another draw engine. So it has the nice inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when a card is removed from your security stack, then we get to draw 1 card. So this combos with Mastemon, where we're going to be removing one of our security stack to remove one of the opponent's security stack, res a level 4, and now on top of that we get to draw a card. And with Wargreymon, this is also really powerful because we get to swing, remove a card from our security stack, do all of the Wargreymon things, and then on top of that draw another card. So the fact that this adds just a lot of extra draw power to the deck makes it a very valuable card to be playing, but we don't want to oversee it because we do want to have lots of other very powerful tools in our deck to be interacting with. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Pulsemon. I kind of wanted to spread the love and just put cards in other areas, but I think Pulsemon is just too good to not run, especially for this style of deck. So what this card is doing is it has the nice on-play ability where if we have 3 or more security, we get to draw a card. If we have 3 or less security, we get to gain a memory. And if we have exactly 3 memory, then we get both effects. So because we have multiple different ways of manipulating our security, we could easily put this card to whatever condition we want to set it to. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running up 4 copies of Turuiemon. So Turuiemon is still just one of the best champions that we have to be working with. Yes, he doesn't have any inheritable abilities, he doesn't have native abilities of his own. We only care about the fact that he evos for 1 and has 6000 DP. So the 6000 DP makes him a little bit stronger than your average level 4, making him a little bit more resilient and less susceptible to a lot of forms of removal, but on top of that, we really just care about the fact that he evos for 1, allowing us to be as tempo efficient with the card as we possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Piddomon. So the blocker slots in this deck is a little bit harder to judge based on what you want to gain out of the deck, based on the different types of cards you could be using or want to be using. So I'm just going to be splitting it up, and Piddomon is just one of the better blockers because he is, again, another really tempo efficient card, evoing for 1. The 5000 DP is a little bit unfortunate because it does make him susceptible to a lot of forms of removal, but the fact that he is a tempo efficient blocker is making him still a very good card to be using, but it doesn't necessarily have to be Piddomon, and you could start spreading the love with some of the other tech and tools that Yellow has to offer. So for my blocker slots, I'm splitting it between Piddomon and Unimon, so I'm going to be running 2 copies of Unimon as a result, just because I do want that variation in their stats. So Unimon evos for 2 and has 6000 DP, where Piddomon evos for 1 and has 5000 DP, means that we have blockers for different situations, and that's just what's making Unimon really good, is just the varied stat line. Now you could think about running the promo Gatomon that also has blocker as long as you have a purple Digimon in play and recovers you, but I felt like, again, the weakness on 5000 DP in this format is just too big of a burden to carry, and I would rather just have the stronger blocker overall. And that leads us to our last champion of the deck, which is going to be 4 copies of Wizardmon. So Wizardmon is another card like Tamermon, where it has this nice inheritable ability where once per turn during our turn, when we remove a card from our security stack, we get to gain 1 memory. So this card is hugely important for the deck, especially if you're going to be running Mastemon as the main. This card just makes Mastemon more playable alone. So what this card is doing for Mastemon is when we digivolve into Mastemon, she digivolves for 4 normally. So now we could gain a memory for trashing our own security, which means it'll put Mastemon at 3, making her a lot more easy to play and making her a more viable card, because now we could then swing with our Mastemon and not pass the turn after digivolving and getting all of that boosts and benefits. And then on top of that, with Wargreymon, because we're going to be drawing from our security stack, this just is another way to gain us 1 memory to enhance and extend some of our plays, making more powerful follow-up plays possible. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Angewomon. So this is the BT-03 Angewomon, and this card is probably the most important ultimate in the entire deck because it's just a very powerful ultimate to be playing because of its 2 abilities. Its when digivolving ability allows us to give one of the opponent's Digimon on their field security attack -2, basically making it so that they can't attack into our security without any boosts or bonuses. So this is really powerful to stop like multi-swing type strategies on high-level Digimon if they're not hiding it in their raising. So that's really, really powerful. And then on top of that, she also has a nice inheritable ability of her own, which is the primary reason why we're playing this card, which is when attacking, not limited to once per turn. If we have 3 or fewer cards in our security, then we get to play 1 yellow level 3 Digimon from our hand for free. So this is what's allowing us to play lots of our very powerful rookies, because we could utilize their on-play abilities in some new and powerful ways, because we have a way to cheat them out and play them for free. So with BushiAgumon, just playing a BushiAgumon for free just allows us to swing with it right away. Lusamon means we could bypass his play restrictions and just slam him onto the field to recover 1. We even have Starmons for more control, and we have Pulsemon to just use for all of its abilities. So this is just another very powerful card to be interacting with the deck, because we're already going to be dealing damage to ourselves, reducing our security, trigger some of our abilities that trigger when we're reducing our own security, and then once we put ourselves to that 3 threshold, then lots of these abilities become online and become very, very powerful for the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Wargreymon. So Wargreymon is another really powerful ultimate to be running in the deck. I think it's probably the second most powerful ultimate we have to be working with. So what this card is doing that's making it so good is the fact that it has the main ability of Digiburst 2. So Digiburst 2 states that we remove 2 cards from his inheritable sources to allow us to reduce one of the opponent's Digimon's DP on their field by 4,000 for the turn. So this is just another good card to just combo with the deck, just because we could fill up our trash for Mastemon. We could reduce one of the opponent's Digimon's DP by 4,000, so that way comboed with Wargreymon's DP reduction, we could hit up to 10,000. So this is just a good combo starter for what we want to be doing with the deck. And on top of that, it also has this nice inheritable ability, where during your turn, while we have 3 or fewer cards in our security, which again isn't very hard to do because we're going to be dealing damage to ourselves, this Digimon gains plus 1,000 DP for the turn, so our Digimon become even stronger than they do before, and that's pretty important because our Digimon aren't necessarily of the highest quality when it comes to DP, which is why we play cards like this and Wizardmon to try to help shore up some of those weaknesses to make them even stronger than they were before. I'm going to be running 2 copies of Angewomon. So this is the starter deck Angewomon, and this card is really only in the deck just because it has a nice generic when digivolving ability. If we have 3 or fewer cards in our security, then we get to recover 1. So it's just another way for us to recover in the deck. So we could try to digivolve into Turuiemon after playing a rookie, and then go into Angewomon to just try to recover 1 after hopefully swinging with Wargreymon and setting up a free rookie off of the other Angewomon's ability. So this just allows us to climb easily, recover easily, and is just another decent card for the deck, even though she doesn't have any inheritable abilities. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Mastemon. Like I stated before, you could make Mastemon the main Mega of the deck. The deck really doesn't change that much depending on what's your main, what's your sub, and what's your support. So it's another just good card to be working with and interacting with the deck because of how much synergy it has with the deck. So what this card is doing is, yes, it is a purple Digimon, but it could evo on top of yellow Digimon, making it very, very playable, and its when digivolving ability is what we're going for with this card. So its when digivolving ability states that we get to trash the top card of both players' securities, ours included, which means we could trigger some of our abilities that activate when our own security is reduced, making her really good for that type of synergy. And for reducing both players' security stacks, we get to then play one purple or yellow Digimon that's a level 4 or less from our trash for free. So we could use Wargreymon to set this up. We could utilize our on-play abilities on any of our level 4 or lower Digimon. Yellow has lots of very powerful on-play abilities on their level 3s, and we do have the Gatomons to think about to run with this Mastemon, making Mastemon just a very interesting card to be running in her own right and her own deck, with a lot of different ways to tech in her own support cards. But I do think for what this style of deck is going for, just the ability to reduce our security, but the opponent's security as well, and then we have Wizardmon to not pass the turn because we'll probably be at 3 memory, so that way we could then swing with Mastemon, hopefully trigger Angewomon's ability to spawn another body, is just what we're looking to gain out of the card and be very, very powerful. But as far as the main mega of the deck goes, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Wargreymon. So Wargreymon is still just that powerful of a card to be playing around with because his one ability doing 3 things just does a lot for what the deck is trying to accomplish. So his when attacking ability is limited to once per turn, but we get to add the top card of our security into our hand. So we're drawing from our security, reducing our security, not only allowing us to try to put ourselves to 3, but when we reduce our own security, those cards will trigger as well. And then on top of that, we also get to unsuspend this Digimon, allowing us to multi-swing and get multiple attacks off in the same turn, so that way we could apply lots of pressure onto the opponent. And then the last part of his ability is we get to reduce one of the opponent's Digimon's DP by 6,000 for the turn. So it's even adding some extra control elements to the deck, so that way we could pair it up with other DP reduction abilities to just delete lots of potential different Digimon. And all of the various other synergies you could be playing with just make this card still very, very good. Next, as far as the options go, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Blinding Ray. So Blinding Ray is another card to reduce our own security if we need to, and if we're at 0 security, then we just get to use it for free, and its ability is still just very, very powerful, allowing us to gain 2 memory. So just the burst to 2 memory can be really, really good because it could make some very powerful plays possible and to push us up further on tempo than what the opponent might be anticipating, on top of the fact that we are reducing our own security, so we could trigger some of the abilities again. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Wyvern's Breath. So Wyvern's Breath, for all intents and purposes, is just the Gaia Force for yellow. It's just the big threat we have waiting in our security, assuming it is going to be triggering in our security, because its security ability activates the main ability, and the main ability lets us reduce one of the opponent's Digimon's DP by 15,000 for the turn, which could basically delete a lot of level 6s and level 7s and below in the game, making it just a very powerful card to be running. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only Tamer of the deck, and that's going to be 3 copies of TK. TK is still just one of the best, if not the best Tamer that we have to be playing around with, because he is Yellow's dedicated memory fixing Tamer. So if our memory is ever less than 3, then he'll just always hard set us to 3, which is really good because we're basing a lot of our plays off of having 3 memory. So that's already very, very good. And on top of that, he has another on-play ability where we get to look at our security stack, reveal 1 card from among it, and add it into our hand. And then if that card was yellow, we get to recover 1. So this is another really good card to be interacting with a lot of our abilities because we are removing a card from our security stack, and that could trigger all of our on-remove abilities. So that's just a really powerful synergy to have with the deck, on top of trying to add to the overall consistency of the deck, because we are using our security as a resource to dig through, so that way we could pick the best card that we need when we need it. And then there's still just a whole lot of different things that you could do and ways to explore the deck, all depending on the support and synergies you want to be interacting with. And because yellow is a very high synergy color, there's just a ton of different things you could do with just the simple concept of being at 3 security and removing our own security. So we could think about using the Pulsemon from BT-06 as another Pulsemon to play, because he'll just automatically put us to that 3 security if we have more than 3, and he becomes memory efficient for doing so by letting us gain a memory for each card he trashed. And on top of that, while we're at 3 security, we could give our Digimon the jamming ability, which allows them to live through possible security checks. So this Pulsemon is really good for that type of setup and gameplay, and then we even have the Bulkmon that he could Digivolve into to gain security tech +1 for being at 3 or more security to push some early game aggression in. Then if you want some other ways to recover in the deck, we do have another rookie that allows us to recover in the form of Promo Piddomon. So Promo Piddomon, if we are just sitting at one or fewer cards in our security, just recovering one is really, really good for an on-play ability that we could figure out multiple different ways on how to use this card. Then, as I mentioned before, if you do want to focus more on Mastemon, we do have the Promo Gatomon and the BT-02 Gatomon to be playing with because they both interact with wanting to have a purple Digimon in play. So this becomes a blocker while you have the Mastemon in play, and if we have the 3 or fewer cards in our security, then we get to recover 1. So this is still just a pretty decent card to be playing around with. It's just I didn't necessarily like it for this version of the deck because of the 5000 DP, but if you are playing more Mastemon focus, there's no real reason not to run this card. And if you do want to play like a Mastemon control focus deck, then the Gatomon from BT-02 just on play, allowing you to reduce the opponent's Digimon's DP, allows you to set up for lots of different combo play with DP reduction. Then we also have Wargreymon to think about from BT-04. This Wargreymon is also treated as a yellow Digimon while he's on the field, so what you're most likely going to be doing is just hiding him and raising, bringing him out, uses Digiburst ability to play a Tamer for free. The Tamer is probably going to be either TK or TK Inkari, because those are the 2 best Tamers that we have to be playing with that we could get the most value out of. And then on top of that, he's also adding to the overall DP reduction and control style of gameplay with his when attacking ability not limited to once per turn, so the multiple swings with Wargreymon could trigger this ability multiple times, where as long as we have a Tamer in play, we get to reduce one of the opponent's Digimon's DP by 2000, so it's just adding more to the control element and aspect of the deck, also allowing us to play our Tamers efficiently. Then, if you want something a little bit simpler and a little bit more generic, you could even think about running Mammothmon, just because Mammothmon has this nice inheritable ability where during all turns, so your turn and the opponent's turn, while you have 3 or fewer cards in your security, then this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP, acting as one of the better ways that we have to DP boost our Digimon. Or if you just want to lean heavier into some more control aspect with the fact that we're already reducing our own security, then we have a new version of a Mastemon to think about, just because whenever we're going to be removing our own security, he allows us to just reduce one of the opponent's Digimon's DP by 2000 as another nice inheritable to think about interacting with. And then there's still just a whole bunch of other megas that you could play in the deck depending on the direction and focus you want to have, and you really could start creating this like toolbox style of deck where you could play a whole bunch of varied and different megas for different situations. Granted, you will probably run into consistency issues, but regardless, just having these different options is just very, very good to think about. So you could play Seraphimon if you just want to run more recovery cards. So it allows you to use your security more as a resource, and the Seraphimon is actually a pretty decent card to be playing because he also can give himself security tech plus for being at 3 or more cards in our security. We do need ways to deal lots of damage onto the opponent, and Seraphimon is another mega in yellow that we could use with a good combination of cards to make him very powerful and very efficient and effective. Then you also could think about running Angewomon, so if you do just like playing Digimon for free, then Angewomon's when attacking ability, allowing us to play level 3s for free, is just that good. Just flooding the field to utilize lots of on-play abilities could be really, really powerful and important for the deck if you don't feel like digivolving up into it to recover 2 as long as we have 3 or fewer cards in our security. I really don't like the on-play ability as much just because BT-06 is a more powerful format where there's lots of ways to deal lots of security damage, so the 2 recovery isn't really going to matter for passing the turn and giving the opponent way too much memory to be working with, but it's still a cute card to think about for that level of flexibility and the different options on how you could play it. Then if you do want to play a little bit more into a control style aspect, we also do have Turuiemon as another very fantastic support card, just because the opponent's Digimon coming out of their raising area gets security attack -3, so this could stop and prevent OTK strategies, because most likely they're going to hide a Digimon in raising, build up a really powerful stack, bring it out, and then try to OTK you. And Turuiemon is one of the few cards to turn that type of strategy off, making her just a very powerful option to be playing in the deck, on top of which she also is a decent card in her own right because of her other ability, where during your turn all of the opponent's security Digimon get -3000 DP, allowing you to aggress into their security that much easier. And then you also have Dynasmon to think about as another potential mega, because Dynasmon is just insane for this type of deck because his all turns ability allows us to, once per turn, recover one of our security cards as long as we are at 3 or fewer security. This is just really powerful because it has lots of synergy with the deck, allowing us to have a nice consistent way of recovering ourselves, but the only unfortunate thing is I do think this is a meta where we're not really going to be expected to see 2 megas on board unless you're warping or cheating them into play, and yellow doesn't have that ability, so the likelihood of actually seeing 2 megas on board interacting with each other is going to be rather rare, which is why I excluded it from the deck, but he is still just a very powerful card because of his first ability alone to interact with certain cards in our deck like Mastemon and Lucemon, where we get to trash the top card of our security, and then we get to look at the top 6 cards and add 2 level 6 or lower Digimon from among them into our hand, and the rest go to the trash, and this isn't even color locked, so you could take Mastemon, and this does help set up Mastemon and Lucemon. So Dynasmon is just another very powerful card to be interacting with the deck. And then as far as a level 7, you could play Chaosmon Voldaron because it's just acting as some good control because of his when digivolving ability, essentially minusing 14,000 to the board. Yes, it's 7,000 twice, but we could use that in various different ways to pick off multiple bodies or stack it up on one big body. And then his on-delete ability gaining 3 memory is just the nice bonus to playing the card. And then we even have more removal options to think about playing. We have Acid Injection, which is acting very similar to Blinding Ray on its conditions, where we have to trash the top card of our security, but the secondary ability of reducing the opponent's Digimon by 5,000 DP isn't tied to our security, so even if we are at 0 security, we could still use Acid Injection to just have a 1-cost option to minus 5,000 DP, and as I mentioned before, there's just more different ways of reducing and deleting Digimon that are at 5,000 DP or below, so that's why I started not liking those Digimon as much. So Acid Injection is just a perfect example of a really good alternate way we could use DP reduction in the deck. And then it has the nice security ability of adding itself to our hand, so that way we could use it when we need it. Then we do have Reinforced Memory Boost. So Reinforced Memory Boost is another way we have it to potentially heal our own security because it's basically like a Holy Wave on steroids. So what Holy Wave was doing was just allowing us for 6 to just generically recover 1. Reinforced Memory Boost does almost the same thing but better, where we get to reveal the top 2 cards of our deck, put one of them on the top of our security, and then put one of them into our hand. So not only is it recovering us 1, it's also allowing us to add a card to our hand, helping with the deck's overall consistency, with a even more powerful delay ability than some of the other memory boosts, allowing us to gain 3 memory instead of 2. But if you do want to run something a little bit more simpler, then we also do have Yellow Memory Boost to act as another good consistency card for the deck, and it has the delay ability to gain us 2 memory, just being another very generically good card we could possibly use. And then as far as an alternate tamer goes, I do think that the best alternate tamer that we could run is going to be TK Inkari. So TK Inkari is very powerful because we're already reducing our own security, so having the start of turn ability where if we have fewer cards in our security than our opponent isn't going to be very hard to achieve to gain 2 memory with. So this is just really, really powerful because it could act as an alternate way of just enhancing and extending some of our plays or putting us to 3 memory if the opponent's trying to choke us and our security is less than theirs. Then on top of that, it has another ability where during your turn, when one of your yellow Digimon attacks, then you get to suspend this tamer to have one of the opponent's Digimon get minus 1000 DP for the turn, adding a little bit of extra control elements to the deck. But for the most part, this is just what I think a Mastemon and or Wargreymon base or shell is going to look like. There's just a whole bunch of synergy that you could be playing with, and there's a lot of room for customization based on the types of tech and tools that you want to be using. So there's just a lot of combination of cards that we could put together to make some very powerful plays happen and to make some very powerful stacks in Digimon. But I don't necessarily think this is going to be hyper tier 1 competitive. I do think this is going to be more of a like tier 2 or tier 3 level of deck. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.